First few weeks on the road, I found comfort in human contact, relished the chance to silence my own thoughts, hear other people's stories. But leaving Pennsylvania, I started to question my approach. Luther had no family, nowhere to go. Said he'd always wanted to see Seattle, suggested we make the trip together. It made sense, safety in numbers, but I convinced him we were safer splitting up, that catching me was probably JD's #1 priority.
Thanks for getting me out of that nut house. Hope you find what you're looking for, Russ.
Truth was, I was looking for a lighter load. Didn't want to be responsible for Luther. Didn't want that burden. Didn't need others' problems. Had enough of my own. I stayed out of sight, put on blinders, focused on my goal. My family needed me to be selfish, but I was still conflicted. Was still living off the dregs of civilization, but there was a certain freedom I started to enjoy. For years, I kept a stack of books next to my bed to read someday. With no deadlines or distractions, I was finally catching up. From a distance, you would have thought I'd actually assimilated. Still had some hard lessons to learn, though, like never leaving food uncovered. The fall didn't seem to have any physical effect on animals. But with so few people around, they became bolder, less afraid of us. Never had rabies before, didn't even know if that raccoon was infected. But I couldn't risk it. I needed help. Unfortunately, the first place I came to was a ghost town. If you thought healthcare was bad before the fall, imagine when all the medicine ran out. Food can always be found if you know where to look, but pharmaceuticals, there was only a finite amount. In Aurora, somebody'd cornered the market on every bandage and medication known to man. It was everything I'd been trying to avoid, but there I was, caught up in somebody else's problems. No matter how many times I saw it, never got used to death. Reminded me of my own mortality, how I was always one misstep away from never seeing my family again.
Hands up! I don't want to hurt you!
Bulk stores like Deal Barn and Value Association, they were the epitome of consumerism. Why buy one toothbrush when you can get 10 for the price of 6? Truth is, I was partially to blame. The public was programmed to consume by advertising, by people like me.
That programming and a scarcity of supplies drove some survivors on Aurora's west side to turn their Deal Barn into a stronghold.
They had enough food to feed a small army, and not just canned goods. They invented a dry ice system that kept food fresh longer than DeLandre's cold packs ever could. Had I not just witnessed a homicide, I would have been more impressed. They called themselves the town council. Born, bred, and raised in Aurora for generations. Blue collar to the bone. They assumed I was with Mark, the one who'd been shot.
You're a stinking tourist!
Tried to explain I didn't know Mark, that I was only in Aurora because I thought I had rabies. Unfortunately, they were in short supply of the one thing I needed, medicine. After some internal debate, they offered me food and shelter for the night. Under supervision, of course. Hard to believe. Terry used to be a soccer mom to 3 boys who vanished during the fall. She begged me not to judge her or anyone till I heard the whole story of Aurora. Terry brought news the town council would lead me to medicine if I'd help them. Sounded like a fair plan, but her request gave me pause.
I didn't mean to kill Mark. I didn't. You have to tell them that.
I didn't understand, not until Frank explained the deal. If I wanted medicine, I had to deliver a package for the town council, across town, to the tourists. Knew I was walking into trouble, but considering I could hardly walk, figured I didn't have much choice. I was sent to deliver a message to the tourists. At least, that's what I thought.
What do you want?
What happened to Mark?
Where are you?
Why did
Where
they
did you
send
come
you
from?
here?
The message told them Mark was dead.
It's okay. He's not a native.
Thank God for Sanjay. The tourists were half a dozen strong, like the natives, but they'd lost their leader, Mark.
The others, at Deal Barn. The natives. They said you'd help me.
It's not the first time they lied.
My fever was kicking in, and I was pissed. I didn't care about their stupid feud. I needed medicine, or I'd be the next casualty in Aurora.
Guess we owe you an explanation. See, 10 years ago, Aurora used to be a nothing little town. But guys like Mark and Arthur, they gentrified it, brought in new blood and new money. Pretty soon housing prices soared. People who grew up in Aurora, the natives, claimed they couldn't afford to live here anymore. They actually blamed us, tourists, for revitalizing this town.
Whatever underlying tension existed before, the fall just brought it to the surface.
The natives, they snatched up all the food they could find. But medicine, that's worth stockpiling.
Neither group would concede defeat, so they holed up in their respective warehouses. Every week, an exchange was made. Fresh food for medicine. Both sides got what they needed. Eventually, though, trade broke down.
And an innocent boy paid the price.
Jared was 15. He was a local basketball hero with a bad case of asthma. One dose of asthma medicine would have saved his life. As a pharmacist, Sanjay knew it, but he was too afraid to speak out.
Jared Jacobs died because of me.
My message, the basketball, it all finally made sense. The natives were saying, an eye for an eye, Mark's life for Jared's. But the tourists, they were declaring war. Several days had passed since that raccoon bit me. I was feeling worse by the minute, and it was painfully obvious I wasn't getting any help here. Sanjay pleaded my case. The tourists had plenty of penicillin, but people willing to die over something don't just give it away to a stranger. The closest hospital was about 20 miles away. 20 miles under normal circumstances would have been a long day, but after a couple hours, I knew I'd be hard-pressed just to make it out of town. That's not why I turned back, though. This conflict I kept feeling, that pull between selfishness and compassion, this time, I convinced myself Aurora was my problem.
Stop! What the hell's wrong with you people? It doesn't matter who built this town or who saved it. All that matters is who's gonna rebuild it. Because that's all our responsibility now. Putting the world back together. One town at a time. I don't know what caused the fall, but from what I've seen, it's the same thing that's been going on in Aurora. Fear, prejudice, one group terrorizing another. Believe me, I'm no different than you. I never would have stuck my neck out like this before. But the world's changed, and we have to change with it. Because like it or not, we've all got something in common now. We're all victims of the past. And we have to let go. We have to.
These people weren't soldiers. They were truck drivers and real estate agents, stockbrokers and teachers, soccer moms and single fathers. They were good, decent people, trapped in a situation they were unprepared for, and I could definitely relate. Turned out what I assumed to be rabies was really botulism, brought on by a tainted can of pork and beans. Ibuprofen, a little potassium, I was on the road to recovery. They said it took courage for me to do what I did. Not really. What Terry and Sanjay did, that took courage. To admit they were wrong, to break away from their groups and do the right thing. When I left Aurora, I was optimistic. My faith in humanity had been restored. Temporarily, anyway.
The realization I was unprepared for my journey was finally sinking in. Leaving New York, I was so naive. If I'd known what the trip would demand of me, let's just say my ignorance was a virtue. For a while, anyway. Once I knew what it took to survive, though, skill and wits I didn't have, I started to lose confidence I'd ever make it home. Decided it was time to change my image. By all appearances, I was just another useless remnant of a lost civilization. Figured if I looked like a survivor, maybe I'd convince others I wasn't a man to be trifled with. Maybe I'd even convince myself. Unfortunately, the latest outdoor gear might make your travels safer, but it won't save your life. Not from an assassin. It's hard to know what's inside you, who you really are, until circumstances beyond your control reveal your strengths and your weaknesses.
He'll send the others.
Was never much of a shopper, but on that trip to the Westmont Mall, I found something. Something I needed more than I wanted to admit. A friend. A traveling companion. Someone I could count on. Someone who could count on me. Knew I had to make a radical change to throw the other horsemen off my scent, so I went south with Jeff. He said he was heading to a place where a bunch of survivors were gathering for some cosmic event.
That's it! Antenna!